The other 3 pages of notes that I gave you, pages 3, 4, and 5, I crudely broke down a bunch of STEM questions and concepts and terms to trigger your thoughts, and we can proceed in whatever way you want. But maybe you should look these over and you should ask me what things you care to learn about. I can talk about this for the next 3 hours, but but we only have one, with a special event towards the end, by the way, and but I would say it's better if I speak to the questions you have on your mind. So scan through this and tell me what you care to hear about. I can tell you things not to say to an editor. I can tell you ways about crafting a paper and how to put your decimal points in points in a straight column. I can tell you all kinds of stuff. But it's really what you need and what will help you the most that I think we should pay attention to.
I think one of the things that I would like to hear from you is not so much the technical part.
I'm sorry, I can't hear clearly. I just can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
That's better, yeah.
I was saying that one of the things I would like you to speak about would be not so much technical issues on how to submit a paper.
But is to what now? I'm sorry. It's just not. Maybe closer up is better.
Is this better? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I was saying that one of the things I would like to like you to speak
beautiful,
about,
beautiful. Yeah, great.
Would be not so much technical issues with how to write a paper, as is political issues with what to do with the paper, and especially our researchers might be submitting their first APA type paper very soon. Some of them are in the process.
Yes.
So very nitty gritty things about strategy on how to pick a journal, and there's all sorts of decisions to make there.
Sure.
Impact, relevance. Some of your notes say things like, do you know the editor, is that a good thing, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Practical strategy points. Well, you have a menu of options. I think. Well, let me address a kind of a background point in a way. Yes, you do need to think about strategy. There is a strategy of some kind, and there's good ones and bad ones. But it doesn't help to think about in a ugly strategic sense, in the sense of cunning and conning an editor or something like that. It's just using good wisdom and being honest with yourself and with the project and so forth. Of course, you want to get the paper. If you're writing a paper, you want it to go as great a distance as it can in intellectual work. Einstein wrote 4 papers in 1905 that went a very long way, right? Well, none of Paloutzian's papers have done that, but done all right at a much lesser degree, and we'll see how all you do. Well, sure, strategy, but not in some ugly sense. But you do want to think about a blend of factors that include the quality of the journal that you might submit to, what might be your first choice, second choice, third choice, if you have to go down the ladder or step a ladder, who your main audience is and your secondary audience is, Nowadays, we pay attention to things called impact factors. Haven't you ever heard of impact factors in journals? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
I hate them, but we have them. IJPR has a good one. I'll tell you what, I'll explain more about it. You have to pay attention to all these things. And then a decision about when to stop trying. So, one of the most basic questions is to ask yourself the question. Instead of starting by asking, "Gee, what journal do I want this in?" Ask the question, "Who exactly do I really want to say something to? And what exactly is it that I want to say to them? Who do I want to speak to? And what do I want them to do differently after reading my papers that they didn't do before?" Okay, that's an important question to present to your own mind many times, but especially at the beginning. Exactly who do I want to say something to? Like, say this conversion purpose in life paper that I just showed you. I'll use this as an example of me having to think through that same question back then. I already mentioned that back then there was no such field as CSR or POR, psychology of religion. Those are intimate cousins, really. They can't be separated. We just use different lingo to talk about a lot of the same thing. But for researcher types like you and me, we're really of the same cloth. Well, at that time, what you're doing wasn't done, and it would be considered taboo. In a psychology department, it was utterly taboo. If you wanted to become a young professor and said, "Well, I'm going to go do psychology of religion research," you were not going to get a job in a major university or hardly any standard university. It just wasn't done. The topic was simply a taboo topic, period. Okay. Now, I'm a young guy. I did this project. I want to publish it somewhere. Where do I publish it? Well, I could publish it in I don't know, a Catholic or Protestant magazine. I could publish it in a few purely religious, more religious studies or social sciencey religious type journals, like there was at the time JSSR. You know JSSR? Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion? Okay, that existed. Mostly sociology, not much psychology in it, but it's a good journal, very fine journal. There was a journal called the Review of Religious Research. It's very social sciencey type. And that was about it. There certainly were no psychology of religion journals in existence at the time at all. None. Zero. But my agenda wasn't to try to promote psychology of religion in those who were interested in psychology of religion. Somehow, between the years 1975 and 1980, I adopted as a professional goal the promoting of the field of psychology of religion in the mainstream discipline of psychology as far as I could during my time. Somehow I just adopted that as a professional goal over about a 5-year period. And so I did this piece of work, and now where was I going to submit it for publication? Well, I decided that I didn't want to submit it in the journals that would be the obvious ones, that is JSSR, or then Review of Religious Research. And then again, like journals like I Exist and the new Division 36 journals and the Cognitive Science Journal, those didn't exist then. Those are all new. Okay. So I had a choice. Either I was going to put it in a place where the people who I wanted to say something to would not see it, right? Or stick my neck out and try to get it into the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, which for a young which in the field of social psych, which is my field, it's like, you know, the closest to God that you can get. You know, JPSP is considered like the primo of primos in social psychology. And I thought, well, I want to get my article in there. Why? It's because those are the people who need to see this. Those are the people in front of whose eyes I want to put this topic. It wasn't so much this one paper. It was really the topic that I wanted to get in to the mainstream field and have it become acceptable, not taboo. And so I said, well, what the heck? I'm a young guy, I'm a young professor. I'm never going to be the next Piaget of psychology anyway. So, you know, that's true. I'm nobody already. And so the worst thing that could happen is what? They would say no. Well, that's okay, because that's where I am already anyway. All right? So I got nothing to lose by giving it a try. So I sent this to the editor of JPSP, and he had it reviewed. One reviewer said yes. One reviewer said no. So the editor said, Ray, revise and resubmit. All right. So I revised it and resubmitted it. And I sent it to reviewers again. And one said yes, the other one said, well, you know. The editor wrote back and said, well, revise and resubmit, but I want you to fix this. And it's looking pretty good. Not the be-all and end-all in the world, but looks okay. But just to be clear on my intentions, I intend to publish. I want to be able to publish the next draft that you send to me. He said that, and I thought, I can do that. So I sat down, revised it again, sent it in, and he accepted it. And it was published in JPSP, and it was like what you call a blockbuster. It was one of the papers who broke a barrier. It got into that journal, the primo journal in the field, and since then there have been a lot of papers published in this field, and some of them, as a matter of fact, I had a hand in getting published because they send me papers on psych and religion to review for JPSP. And I have been able to help others get published, not by just saying, oh, they're good right off the bat. No, they always have to be revised and resubmitted. By giving critical, exacting help through the review process to say, if this is fixed in this way, it should make a good publication, and it should be just right for that journal. It worked. So, how did I pick that journal? I picked that journal because those were my target audience. Those are the people I wanted to say something to. What did I want them to do differently after reading the paper than before? I wanted them to do more research in this general topic area, and I wanted the journal editors to accept more papers in this general topic area. And I'm delighted to tell you that it happened. And it happened bit by bit. Slowly, but by 1985 it began to show more results, 90 more, and today more, and now this field has gone like wide open compared to where it began. So that's my story with this one paper. Your agenda or your particular target audience may be different. As to the question of who the editor is and so on, well, it's certainly good to do your homework and find out whether they're nice folks or not. I have an opinion on editing, and that is that an editor is supposed to actually edit, not just shuffle papers. Now, let me give you what I'm talking about. I won't name journals here, but there are journals that have an editor, and they have about 9 or 12 associate editors. Okay? So you submit a paper to the editor, and what does that editor do? Looks at it and sends it to one of the associate editors. And mostly that's just that's being a mailing stop, where you assign this paper to that associate editor, that one to the other one, and so forth. And you really don't do much editing yourself. That's not how I do it. I do most of the editing for my journal myself, and I have 3 associate editors who I ask to do things specifically on topics that I'm bad at. And they're associate editors, well, partly because I know them well, we collaborate really, really well. And we've just become dear friends over the years. But also, in terms of the work itself, it's because, like, one of them knows something really well that I really am bad at, and another one something else, and another one something else. So when I need that kind of help, that's when I go to my associate editors. So I don't overwork them. I ask them to do little, not lots. And of course, I then handle everything, and I'm responsible for everything. And I think that is important, because the more you get personalized attention, the more an author gets personalized attention from an editor, the better the help will be for you. Now, this relates to, like, what can you expect to hear back, and why should you stick with a journal or not, or try a journal or not. If I were in your shoes at your stage, I would try to ask a few questions and find out, well, which editors actually do give you help and which actually don't. Let me explain. What you should not do is send an article to an editor that you know is not ready to send or publish. You should not send it prematurely, knowing that it needs to be revised and resubmitted, and then saying to the editor, well, I need your help, and then I think it could become a good publication. No, that's not what to do. That's asking for an easy rejection. When you submit something, you should do so on the assumption that you have got it as ready to publish as you possibly know how, and that if the editor said yes, that yeah, it would be ready. You would want it. You want it to be just that good, polished. Okay, no slop, no loose ends, no missing references. Everything exactly right. That's when you submit it, knowing that if it's positive response, it'll be revised and resubmit 99% of the time. Okay, that's nothing to be afraid of. That's nothing but help. That's gold. If a good revise and review help, that is gold for the author and for the paper. I get thank yous back from authors over and over and over again for the help they got through the reviews. Not only those whose papers are then later accepted, but including papers that are rejected. I have a computer full of notes back from people whose papers I rejected, saying thank you. Not for the rejection. They're not thanking me for the paper being rejected. They're thanking me for the help they got, so that when they revise and resubmit the paper somewhere else, they really got some good help from what they went through with IJPR. And to me, that is what an editor belongs doing. And if an editor doesn't do that, if an editor just judges a paper but doesn't help edit the paper to improve it, well, then I don't think the person, personally, I don't think the person ought to be editing. If, you know, an editor, he should just be a judge, not an editor. Okay? An editor is supposed to actually edit. Okay? So I would find out whoever you're thinking of sending it to, how other people's experiences were with that editor. You know, did they actually help, or were they just a judge? You know, one kind I think is great, and the other kind I don't think very much of. And so when you send it in a way that you think is ready. Now, I got to go down a list of a few things that I wrote here that I think are, I have received all of these. But things not to say when you write to an editor. Don't say the following. Dear Dr. Bloke, I invite you to review my article, as once was said to me. No, don't say that. Actually, that article was eventually published, but not because of that invitation. You're just saying, I'm submitting this for publication in your journal. The paper is not under consideration nor published elsewhere. I would appreciate hearing word from you as soon as you're done with the process. That's all. Okay. Other things you do not need to add is statements like, by the way, I'm submitting this article to you, and I'd like you to know that we've discovered something truly groundbreaking that will revolutionize all of the knowledge in the cosmos, etc. Okay. Don't say anything. Okay. Or don't say, by the way, I'm submitting this to you for publication in your journal. By the way, I see that you're running for president of the American Psychological Association. Good luck. I hope you win. I just got advanced to status where I actually vote next year. You see, that's a thing not to say to an editor that you're writing to. Or an obviously inappropriate journal paper for the journal. I have received really fine papers that are on economics submitted to IJPR. And I simply have to write back and say, I'm sorry, but this is a psychology journal, not an economics journal. I just have to tell you to try elsewhere. And as we speak, this morning, I have in my computer, I received it just before we Skyped, a paper that is straight theology. Now, this is a psychology journal, but it's a straight theology paper. I realize it has religion in it, but it really, so do your homework in advance so that you have an idea, so you know that you're submitting to a place that makes sense. There is something important here is the matter of disciplinariness or subdisciplinariness or special topicness of various publication outlets. Using psychology as the example just because I happen to know that. As you know, there's the general psychology journals. And delightedly, they are now publishing psychology of religion and CSR kinds of studies. The journal Psychological Science is an absolutely superior journal. JPSP, Journal of Personality, Personality and Social Psychology Review, publishes Psychology of Religion journals, articles. And then, and so forth for child development, abnormal psych, and so forth. Now, there's also special topic journals like the International Journal for the Psychology of Religion, the new journal called the Journal for the Cognitive Science of Religion that Dimitris is what, an editor of? Yeah, or some, yeah, editor of or overseeing or something. Yeah, new journal, a topical journal. There's a journal called Religion, Mental Health, and Culture. Good journal. Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion, mostly sociology, but includes other things. Well, these are all good, but they're specific and they're targeted, they're focused. There's pros and cons. Although, in a minute, I'm going to explain why I think today it's moving. We're moving towards a world where it doesn't make any difference. Pretty soon, it's not going to make much difference any longer. But speaking, say, from the past up till now, where you publish something made a difference because of who would receive the journal and the mission of the journal for that society or organization or organ that published it. Like psychology journals are published by psychological societies of one kind or another, and so they are supposed to speak psychology to psychologists. And the people who receive them are psychologists, mostly. So if you want to say something to psychologists, like I did with this Conversion, Purpose, and Life article, well then try to publish it in a psychology journal. If you're trying to speak to religious studies scholars, well then maybe, trying to publish an article, the identical article, trying to publish it in a psychology journal may be a bad idea, because religious studies scholars, except for people like you, the ordinary religious studies scholars are not going to see it. They don't read psychology journals, right? And most of them don't know how to read them, even if they see them, because there's too many technicalities in the nature of the writing. Okay, and it goes the other way. Like when they publish something on religious conversion, but it's written in one of the esoteric or ancient religious languages that I don't know how to read. Well, I'm afraid I can't. It does. I don't see it, and if I did see it, I wouldn't know how to read it. Okay, so it goes both ways. It's not that one's better than the other, but they're different and they have different purposes. So you'd have to decide. Do you want? Is your goal to say something to religious studies as a field, or to the cognitive science of religion people specifically and narrowly, or to all of behavioral science? These are different. These are decisions only you can make, and they'll guide you to where to aim what you're doing and why. And I don't know that there is a best answer. There's not one perfect answer for this. There's different answers for different goals and purposes. When I was a young guy, I had a certain kind of set of goals and purposes, and when I was a young guy, I wouldn't have wanted to edit the International Journal for the Psychology of Religion. And then, 20 years later, I was I was sentenced to do it. I was pushed and shoved to do it, and I turned out that I learned immediately that I was good at it, and I actually loved doing it, and I'm able to help. I'm able to help a lot by doing it, and it's 15 years later. It's still a kick. It's still a blast. And I get to have Skype with my friends, my friends in the Czech Republic. Who would have ever thought of that? It never didn't occur to me. So who you're aiming for does matter. I've talked already about, oh, here's a thing, a question, international journals versus national journals. There are differences. Using psych of religion journals specifically, there is IJPR, which you know about, and then there's the new APA Division 36 journal, which is called Psychology of Religion and Spirituality. So it's sort of like its American counterpart. They're both good journals, but they do different things, and their primary audience is different. I mean, the primary audience of that journal is the people who receive the journal are the people in that division of APA. So if you primarily and firstly want to say something to them, well, that's a good place to submit. But if you primarily want to speak to, like people like you or the international psycho-religion community or the international cognitive science people, then that's probably not a good place to submit. Okay, any number of international journals would be better because of who is the primary ones who see that journal and the primary readership, and who are you going to influence? Who do you want to say what to? Now, I said a minute ago that this was so, and it is so, but there is a tool we all now use that is some ways making what I've just said little by little not matter so much anymore. And that is these computers that we're all using now. Back in the days when we didn't have these computers like this, I was alive then. My dissertation was done on a typewriter, old-fashioned typewriter. You've heard of them at least. And my data, I analyzed my data. Well, there was no, this was before SPSS or SAS or the other stats programs were written. We wrote our own statistical analysis programs using a program, a computer language called Fortran, and we entered the data on what was called IBM key punch cards. How many of you know what Fortran and IBM key punch cards are? A couple of you know, okay. Have you ever seen an IBM key punch card? Okay, a couple of you have seen them. Okay, some of you not. All right, a little while ago I was teaching a class and I asked them that, and one of them was honest and said, well, I did see an IBM key punch card in a museum. Okay, well, that's how I used to do it. In fact, that's how I did the stuff for this Conversion Purpose in Life article. It was on old-fashioned IBM key. Anyway, my point was going to be paper journals, we still have them. IJPR is still paper journals, but bit by bit, they're going online. And my journal is quite normal in this respect. What they do now is I send in papers to say, okay, publish this. Okay. And in the old days, they used to typeset it, etc., keep it in-house, and wait till they have the next whole issue assembled. Then they would print it and mail it to libraries and individuals, whoever subscribed to it. That was when it was published, and that was the first time the paper would be seen. Okay? So every quarter, every 3 months, if you subscribed to it, you'd get your paper copy in the mail. That was how it was done. All right, now that's still done, but something else is done first. Now I send them things to publish, and they typeset set then, and very quickly, within a month or two, they publish them online. They put them online. And they have DOI numbers now. And anybody who does a literature search comes across these things that early, that soon. Now, the authors are extremely happy because it gets their stuff out there early. That's good. And then it doesn't come out in paper until the time when they need me to make the table of contents for the next quarterly paper issue. Then they say, okay, Ray, these are the papers we have in our lineup. Would you make the table of contents from the ones you want for the next issue and send it to us, and then we'll print the paper issue and mail those out. Okay, that could be 6 months later after the online ones were online. Or, you know, it could be variable. It could be 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It could be however long it is. But the electronic things come out first. And not only that, after they're out in paper, they're always online anyway. Okay? So if somebody does a literature search, they come across it before it was formally published, after it was formally published, in paper form, I mean. They just come across it, and it doesn't matter what journal it's in. If it's abstracted by psych abstracts or by religious and theological abstracts or by whatever scientific abstracts there are, if a paper is abstracted by these abstract entities, then you put in a literature search and you just get it. And you don't have to look very far. All you have to do is type the name of the paper and the authors that you think you want in the topic in your little Google search window in your browser, and you'll get it. You don't even have to hunt very hard. So that means that although in one sense, yeah, the journal you submit it to kind of matters. In another sense, no, it doesn't matter at all. And it's rapidly becoming that way from the way it used to be, because everything is online accessible. Okay, so now I would say, well, gee, do you really need to publish in the Journal of Personality and Social Psych if you want somebody to see your paper? Well, no, because somebody who searches for a topic, they're going to see your paper anyway. Okay. So things are changing. This change is occurring now. Every year there's more movement towards this, and I receive notices about this from Taylor and Francis, the publisher of IJPR. It's just going that way. So it's becoming like. Just like it's becoming one world where we can talk from 9,000 miles away, like we're doing, and journals are one world also becoming. And this includes journals, worldwide journals, not just American journals. I mean, this is everything. There is one difference, and that is English language versus non-English language journals. Like it or not, English is the international scientific language, and occasionally something in a non-English language goes some distance, but not often. We know the historical consequences for this. And it's just the reality that is the way it is so. I even personally feel funny about it. I spend a lot of time at the university at Leuven, Belgium. Kind of a second home to me. In the past 10 years, I've spent 12% of my time at the university at Leuven. And when I first went there, I said, well, shouldn't I learn Dutch? Do you have a course in Dutch that I can take and learn? Because I'm coming to, Flanders, and I need to speak Flemish Dutch. And they said, no, it's a waste of time. Everybody here speaks English anyway, and they said, don't bother. So I go there and I feel guilty. I feel like, well, it's like this. They come to the U.S. and they speak English, and I go to Belgium and I speak to them in English, I should be speaking Dutch, shouldn't I? I just say I feel like the Brits, the Americans, and the Australians, we're all cheating. And the rest of you have to learn this other language. That's something, I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it means you're writing in a second or a third language, and I keep oftentimes authors who are writing in English in their second or third or fourth language write to me and they say, I'm so sorry for my English, it's not so good. I write back and I say, please don't worry. And I sort of tell them what I just told you, but I said, just imagine I was trying to write to you in Farsi or Chinese or German or even Dutch, which I know this little much of. I would be a total failure. I can write about 25 words in Spanish, but not enough to write a journal article. So what it means for you is if there's any difficulty in that way, do have somebody who is qualified to polish your text for English prose so that you don't get held up or criticized for doing something that is amazing to do in the first place, and that is write in something that's not your own language. So I'm quite humbled by people who do that. If I could point the finger at Zygolatis, he's all over the map in languages, which is quite impressive. I'm jealous.
No check.
What?
No check.
Okay. So, I got some other picky things to tell you. Do label the axes of your graph. How many times do I get a graph and the vertical axis is left blank? Don't do that. Do add numbers correctly. How many times do I get papers and it says, well, now there were a total of 100 subjects, 60 women and 10 men. Does that sound right? No. Do I really read that? Yes. Yes, I really read that. It's just a lot of things. Be humble, and if an editor helps you, be thankful. Don't assume it's the editor's job to help you. When you submit something, the editor is not obligated to give you help. Like I said, some editors just make decisions. And there's even one journal that I know of who's published that they don't give authors help for corrections to get a paper eventually published. It has to be accepted as submitted or not, or just rejected. Again, I don't consider that editing, I consider that decision making. And of course that can be done well or badly, but it's really not editing. A real editor will be a helper in my feeling of the task. I guess the last thing is, when in doubt, send it out. You don't know. See, you don't know what's going to happen until you stick the thing in the mail. Well, in the old days, what I would say, and what I said to me with this conversion purpose in life paper, I said to myself, well, what's my job? Well, my job isn't to get it published. My job is to do the best I can and stick it in the mail. We did things then with paper mail. Okay? That's my job. My job is to address the envelope and put it in the mailbox. And then do nothing, or something else, I mean, and then see what happens, that's all. Worst thing that can happen is say no, and that's where I am now, so that's no loss. And then you never know, they might make a mistake and take it. And they did. Turned out to be a good paper. So that's what I'd say to you all. Yeah. Is there anything else I can answer?
Hey, Ray. My name's Paul Reddish. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly, yes.
So I was wondering, as a journal editor, what you use for your criteria for acceptance and rejection. So obviously there's two stages for you. There's when you first get the paper, whether or not to send it out to review, and then I guess when you also get the reviews back from the reviewers. If there's any, I mean, obviously there's certain things it has to be, I guess, to do with religion and psychology, as you mentioned for yourself.
Yeah.
And
or
some
CSR,
kind of, and some kind of methodological rigor, but obviously no experiment's perfect, so there's always going to be flaws. So do you have any kind of criteria that you use to judge whether or not it should be published or not?
Sure.
In your journal.
Yes. Yes. A good way to answer that is to describe the procedures. A paper comes, and the initial decision is to send it out to reviewers or not. And so the initial thing is that. And there's, let's see, two or three. I mean, the automatic decision is to send papers out to review, with the following exceptions. Okay, there's two or three reasons to reject a paper without review. One is if it's simply not appropriate for the journal, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, I simply write a nice note back and say, well, gee, this paper is about this, whereas this journal does that, and so I'll refer you to some other journals. Okay. Another reason to reject a paper without review is if I read it, and if I can see right away that that it simply cannot be saved. That my reviewers, and I have just a wonderful batch of reviewers, I could do nothing without those good reviewers. That if it simply cannot be saved, and I can tell, then I write back to the author right then and simply say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to send this out to review because, and then what I try to do is provide as much help as I possibly can, because I want to be treated, I want to treat them the way I would want to be treated, helped instead of just told something. And so I'll do that, but I won't send it out to reviewers and abuse, as it were, and consume my reviewers' energy and time and labor, which it is. It does cost a little bit of somebody's labor to do a review, a good quality review. And so I want to send to them only things that are worthy of reviewing. Okay, so certain things I'll decline without review, and then everything else otherwise goes to review. That's most things, of course. And they get reviewed, they get rated on 7 rating scales: the quality of writing, the quality of theory, the literature review, data analysis, validity, possible impact, and so forth. 1 to 5 ratings from terrible to really great. And then there's a comment they write, a statement I write to the author, and if they wish to, write a separate statement confidential to me. Okay. I get those reviews back, a minimum of 2, Although, I mean, I can do it any way I want, but I like to use a minimum of 2 well-done reviews. 3 or 4 is utterly wonderful, but at least minimum of 2 well-done ones. So what I do is I sit down, I read the paper, I read the reviews, I sit and I think. And the question is, okay, what exactly is the exactly right decision for this paper, and how to say that back to the author? That's my task. Now, that's kind of like, in a way, it could be thought of like, similar to grading student papers. You know, you give I don't know, in the American grading system, A, B, C, D, F, or I don't know how you have it in European systems, but a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, a high grade, a medium grade, a low grade. Okay, I've got to say, whatever the decision is, I've got to say it exactly right. And the criteria include not only the technical features of the study, like did they have the right control group, or are the data analyses correct, or something like that, but also whether the idea itself adds something new to our public thinking about this area of work, research, so that it will nudge an idea a little bit forward. Does it contribute? If it's merely saying something that's already been said 25 times, shows the same finding again, even if it's technically good, there's not a whole lot of reason to publish it because we've already established that, right? And so that's something not in the favor of the paper. Even if it's technically correct. If a paper has a new idea to offer, but say it didn't have a right control group, but the idea is sufficiently cool, it would push our thoughts a little bit. It would challenge somebody's idea about something, you know, out there that's in the published literature. I might say, well, yeah, this has this flaw. The author has to admit it, has to have a little section at the end that says limitations and direction and future directions, you know, where you just say, well, this study was limited because, right? It was a cross-sectional sample instead of a longitudinal study, for example. That's a typical critique of a study where the key question involves change over time, right? Cross-sectional data versus longitudinal data. Longitudinal data are much harder to get, but much more needed. Okay, so you put a section that says, well, this tells us something, but it can be done better if somebody will do it longitudinally. All right. Well, okay, the study's not perfect, but it's still good, and it adds a new idea. And I'd say, yeah, I'll publish that. See, so the idea is to push ideas a little further. Attempts to merely replicate in the mundane mechanical sense of doing only what somebody did and not stretch it further, those are not likely to get published. Occasionally a non-replication might be get published, but even there's so many reasons why something couldn't replicate that's pretty not a good bet for you. But if it's not if you've attempted not an exact replication but a partial replication, but that also stretches the original study a step further, okay, that's useful because you can say, see, we've taken a step into, you know, so-and-so study and did that, but now we're going to try to step a little further by adding this to it. So we've got somewhat replication of an established finding, but also stretched it to one new thing here. One or two or three new little things. Okay, that kind of thing helps a paper because it argues for stretching to new ideas. And the whole point of doing good science isn't to just publish a bunch of numbers, it's to come up with good ideas. The whole point of science is to make good theory. And that means pushing ideas forward. It's not pushing numbers as such. The numbers are only evidence or not evidence for an idea, and it's the ideas that we're after.
Can I ask you something here, right?
Yes, yes.
These days we've been discussing about replication, precisely. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
And we've been saying that replication is it's a fundamental part of the scientific process, right?
Yes.
And it's very important as a contribution to science, but it's
That's
not a
right.
very important contribution to your CV.
Yes.
So how do you work with that? And now, you just told us that journals are not particularly fond of mere replication.
I know.
But on the other hand, if you have one study that shows this result at a 0.05 significance, which is, has 1 in 20 chances of being a product of random chance.
Right.
How do we proceed if we never replicate this? Because we it's never going to be published in a good journal.
Yeah. Well, I'm very aware of all that you've said, and exactly what you have said has always bothered me. Because I was always taught the same thing you are taught and just said. Replication, if a finding doesn't replicate, well then it's not a robust finding and it doesn't work in the real world. The very reason we do science is to find out what works, and that means it has to work over and over again, otherwise it doesn't work. So so this problem has bugged me since the time I was a student. In my professional time, the professional feeling about it was, I think, the problem that is reflected the problem. That is, we'd learn about the need for replication, and then, but if somebody wanted to actually do a replication, they'd say, well, don't do that. We already know that. Show us something new. And so showing us something new is how you get grant money, is how you get tenure, Don't just show us what we already know. Okay, so we say one thing out of the left side of our mouth and the opposite thing out of our right side of our mouth, and we're talking double speak to ourselves. And that is really what has happened for my whole professional life. Maybe it's changing a little bit now in the behavioral and social sciences because of the problems with the more blatant problems of two things in the past 4 or 5 years. Some is simply blatant problems of lack of replication, and some is the problem of cheating in some studies that's been noted in psychological science and a few other journals, which means a phenomenon can't replicate if it was simply fabricated in the first place, which means somebody does need to replicate. And so one good little step in a good direction is that there's a group of authors, I think it's 3 people, I'm not exactly sure, who have decided to conduct what they call the replication project, or something like that. I think I don't know if this is exactly right, but it's kind of like this. It's something like they went to like 3 years of a journal spread apart, like, the year 2007, the year 1999, and the year 2010. Okay, something like three full years of this one journal. I think maybe it's JPSP. I don't remember. And said, okay, we're going to conduct a research project, and we're going to try to literally replicate every study in those 3 years of the journal. Or maybe those 3 issues of the journal. Maybe it's just 3 issues, not 3 years. Yeah, it's probably just 3 issues, because 3 years would be way too much. Okay, maybe it was just 3 issues, right, of a journal. And say, we want to try to replicate every study in those three issues exactly. Okay, well there you have plenty of work for your doctoral students to do. And that might tell us something, you know. If 1 in 20 of those things replicate, that tells us that the whole science is at great risk of being taken with a grain of salt. You know that American English phrase, take it with a grain of salt? It means, you know, don't pay much attention to it. It's not worth your time, you know. Whereas if 19 out of 20 of those studies replicate, well then we say, oh gee, those are a bunch of robust findings, you know. So that's going to be interesting. The third interesting, and this is the odd case, the third interesting event in the recent past that has stimulated some concern, a lot of concern with replication, is a study by Daryl Bem that was published in either JPSB or Psych Science, I forget which. But you know who Daryl Bem is? You know what I'm referring to? He published an article that included 9 studies where he concluded that what he called the psi phenomenon, that is, people could remember events that had not occurred yet, had accurate memory for future events. You know, he claims his data show that, and others say, whoa, that can't be true, and so it stimulated a concern with replicating strange findings. You know, is his really the 1 in 20, or the 1 in 1,000, or what? You know. So it's a problem. Now, what do you do? What do you do practically now at your stage? Okay. Well, in the practical sense, I would probably not advise. And this is strategy now. This is a strategy that you think we don't like to have to think of strategy in this way, but it's reality. So I think I would say, I don't think I would advise doing merely replications in the mechanical sense of simply saying, here's what somebody did and I'm going to do exactly the same no matter what. For the reasons I mentioned, you know. And besides, technically you can't anyway. You can't really use the same subjects. If that study was done at the University of Minnesota and you want to replicate it at the University of Bologna, well, you really aren't doing an exact replication anyway. The subjects are different, if nothing else. So it's really going to be some variation of partial replications and extensions. And that seems to be a middle ground that has worked and can work to both bolster findings that do exist already, if they replicate, or speak against them if they don't. In other words, it can do the service of doing either one of those, and at the same time stretching the question to something else at the same time. Now that might take some extra brains to design studies like that, but I would think that's a reasonable middle ground way to go, and it certainly means that there's no need to throw out the notion of replication altogether where you're going to actually try to do it. If, after all, let's say if you do a study that finds something, unless you're weird, you're very likely going to want to see if you can do it again, if that happens again. So maybe whatever heart rate responses you found in Spain, you know, showed a certain curve. Okay, unless you're weird, you're going to you will say, well, I want to see if it happens another time. So you go to Greece and see if you get the same curve there. And then you go to Los Angeles and see if you get the same curve there, or whatever. Well, those are replications, but they're also extensions. And it's that way of proceeding that actually builds a body of work over a long number of years. Actually, it's not that one study does it. It's really that long, slow process of work evolving from other work that does it, and that includes elements of replication, but also elements of extension. So, in a strategy sense, that's the strategy that makes sense to me, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, I see two, okay, there you are. Okay, hi.
Hi, I'm Emma. And my question is something different. And that is you were talking about research papers.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could tell us some advices or suggestions for theoretical paper, how to write them and how to publish them.
Okay, say it again, because I couldn't hear the sound real clearly. So do it again, and I'm going to try to listen really closely.
If you have some suggestions about theoretical papers.
Hold on, let me put my speaker closer. Try again. I got my speaker right here by my finger.
Okay, my question was about your suggestions or advices for theoretical papers.
Theoretical papers,
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Oh, as opposed to empirical research papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent question. Excellent question. The first thing I have to tell you is IJPR publishes theory and research and some commentaries and so on, and perspectives on other issues. And sometimes somebody will say, here's a true story. Somebody came up and said, Ray, I really like it when you publish those theory papers. You ought to publish more good theory papers. And I said, well, fantastic. When you send it to me? Right? my point being, somebody has to send it to me before I can publish it. An editor can publish only what an editor receives. I don't invent this stuff out of thin air. Okay, so you, Eva,
Yes,
I personally invite you to submit a good theory paper to me.
Okay, I will.
It'd be wonderful. Yeah, I do have suggestions, and let me start with, let's say, the introduction to a dissertation as good for a dissertation, but bad as a theory paper, right? And the reason I'm doing this is because just about 2 weeks ago, a very nice, doctoral student in Hong Kong, China, submitted what she actually submitted was the introduction to her dissertation, but she submitted it as a theoretical review, a theory review, okay, of a certain area, kind of a CSR type area. And I read it, and this was one that I sent back without having it reviewed because I knew it was not ready to be reviewed. She needed to do something else to it first, and what she needed to do was translate it from a documentary statement of a lot of studies of the kind that might go in the beginning of a master's thesis or some dissertations. It's reviewing, but it's really documenting. It's not doing the level of analysis and rethinking and reconstruction of a new idea that a real theory paper would do. Okay, So it was good for a dissertation or a master's thesis, but not for the next level. So I sent it back. That's what not to do, but it's a good starting place. The key is that it needs to be getting at a core idea that is actually in the literature, right? Actually in the literature. And it needs to, let's see, it needs to review the research, but not, I want to say it this way, not just review it, not just document it. It needs to document and show and evaluate the research findings in order to talk about the ideas. Because a theory paper is supposed to say, well, here's the ideas we have so far. Here are the evidence that people have put forth for them. And here's some evidence against them. And now what do we do with this? So I'll propose this little different way or a new way. It could be a little different way or a totally new way. Whatever. It could be whatever it is. Of reconstructing our thoughts so that we change how we think. So what you're doing is you're making a new theory. Okay? A theory is an idea. A theory is not, necessarily true with a capital T or whatever. A theory is an idea. If it's good theory, it will generate research. And of course, to be a scientific theory, it has to be something that is testable by evidence. Okay, that's critical. That's why so-called creation science in real conservative Christianity. Okay, that's why it's not science. Because the main idea for the cause of events is not testable by evidence. No matter what the evidence are, they are made to fit this idea. Okay, it's an idea, okay, but it's not a scientific idea, because it's not subject to falsification or confirmation by evidence. It's just an idea, and things are made to fit it. So any good theory idea has to be testable by publicly accessible evidence. That's critical. Oh, and I have to add a qualification. At least it has to be testable by evidence, in principle, testable by evidence. It may be that it may be that you state a theory and we don't have the tools today to actually test it, but in principle we could, right? Okay, that's still a good scientific theory.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't test it today, but we can test it tomorrow. That's I don't know anything really about physics, but they tell me that's some of Einstein's theory was that way. He stated it, and at first, well, in principle, it was testable by evidence, but there were some things about it that at the time couldn't be testable because nobody had the tools to do it. Well, later they did. Okay, so that's okay. It's the kind that just aren't testable that are not. Well, they are ideas, but they're not scientific ideas. Put it that way. Be respectful. So that's the key. So if I were going to construct a theory paper, I would say we have this theory about this phenomenon. Use one that I know, religious conversion. I know a bunch of stuff about religious conversion, and I would begin by saying, well, okay, we have this phenomenon, conversion, or nowadays people also call it spiritual transformation. They use that phrase. They make a bigger phrase. Okay, and I'm a psychologist, so I'm interested in explaining it, understanding how it works, how the human mind works to do that. And we have theories that say, well, see, these processes might work, those processes might work, these other processes might work, and each of these has a certain kind of evidence maybe not the other kind of, not all the evidence. Each one has its own kind of evidence. Some of them are studies of people who are already converts, so you have evidence from afterwards. Others are studies from changes in mental patients. So you have a unique kind of data from people who are ill, but it's still evidence of some kind. And then you have, conversions in different ages and so on and so on. All right. And people fill out questionnaires about cognitive or emotional or other changes or personal life changes for why they converted. Or deconverted, also, same thing. Same questions, deconversion. All right, so you have different kinds of evidence that may speak to different sorts of theoretical orientations. Okay, then I say, okay, that's what we have so far, but there's no theory that that yet anybody has said that that is capable of integrating these things. Okay, so I have an idea. I'm going to try it, and I think if we conceptualize the process that goes through people's minds during conversion this way, that can integrate this kind of evidence, that kind of evidence, and this other kind of evidence, and basically pull together threads of ideas from all three theories and to make it into this one theory now that I'll propose that I think covers more ground. Okay? There you have a cool paper. And in a theory paper, you may or may not actually have new data. I mean, you can write a world-changing theory paper based only on published work already, or your own published work already, or you can write a world-class theory paper that does that, but also says, I have new data here that also I add to this. Specifically designed to see how it works with this new theory. And by golly, it works so good, see. So that's done both ways. The logic of a theory paper is not dissimilar. It's not unlike the logic of an empirical research paper, except that you normally don't have like your new method, your specific methods, your specific data, your specific statistics. But in place of that part of a research paper, it might include the presentation of prior existing evidence and so forth, and then so you might start with ideas, have this middle section that is a little more discussing the evidence, pros and cons, and then your new theory that comes out of it. If I were doing something like this, I'd probably say my theory stuff at the beginning and have some. I would have some statement of what my new idea is going to be there. Towards the end of the introduction part, and then I'd have this center section that does this, but then I'd come back and say, see, my new idea is so cool because look how it works so well, I'm giving you pure imagination, you understand.
Yeah.
This is Paloutzian's fantasy, but that would be a good logic to follow to craft a theory paper. And in fact, if I use a famous scientist, Einstein, he was a theorist. He really was not an experimentalist. He really didn't go around and collect much data of his own. What he did was write theory, and probably the most influential scientist of all time. So theory's okay. And if you have one in CSR or psychic religion area, and you're international, so I'm the guy,